Folks, I'm so glad I can finally say that The Crew 1 is fully playable offline as of today, the 15th of September. The Crew was officially shut down by Ubisoft over a year ago, and this didn't just mean that you couldn't access the online parts of the game or that it was delisted from stores so you couldn't buy it anymore. This meant that nobody could play the game at all. Everyone who purchased The Crew had that purchase essentially taken away from them. It was like the game was wiped from history. It was just gone. And unfortunately, Ubisoft made no effort to make the game playable offline. But a small and dedicated mod team formed The Crew Unlimited, which aimed to bring The Crew back and preserve it forever. As of today, they have officially succeeded by releasing TCU to the world. Now, to be clear, this isn't just some fan-hosted server that will keep the game running for a while longer and then maybe die out itself, rendering the game unplayable yet again. No, this is a fully offline patch for the game that emulates a server on your local machine that the game can run on, that nobody can take away and doesn't need an internet connection. As long as someone has the game files and this patch, The Crew will remain playable forever offline, and I cannot stress how important that is. Game preservation, offline compatibility, and just media preservation as a whole is a pretty hot topic these days, honestly in large part because of this game, and I cannot thank the Crew Unlimited team enough for working on this and bringing The Crew back from the void. The install process is super easy, by the way. I do own a legitimate copy of the game through Steam, so all I had to do was install the game on Steam, download and install the TCU launcher from their website, and then open it up, point the launcher to my installation, hit patch, and then launch the game. It could not have been easier. Within minutes of starting the process, I was already in-game experiencing this awesome world yet again. Now, I want to talk a bit about The Crew itself, because this game is now closing in on being a decade old, and a lot of you might not have ever played it before, and might be wondering if you should check this out for the very first time. So the first Crew game is really nothing like The Crew 2 or Motorfest. Yes, it does share generally the same map as TC2, but the overall tone and gameplay is completely different. The Crew 1 is a pretty serious single-player career-focused campaign with what I certainly consider to be one of the better stories told in racing games. Now, if I'm being honest, that's a relatively low bar anyway. It's not like racing games are usually known for their masterful storytelling, but in a modern world full of high-energy festival racers where your only character trait is that you're a superstar, The Crew paints a very refreshingly different picture and takes on a pretty serious tone with some heavy themes. There are real characters here with strong and believable motivations. You will actually want to know what happens next in many parts of the story and will be rooting for or against certain characters. So if you're just looking for a proper single-player career to play again and haven't played The Crew, I think you'll be really impressed with this game. And speaking of impressive, of course, The Crew's map is the entire continental United States. Not in one-to-one scale, of course, it's very much boiled down into a popular hits mashup of the country, but more or less every state or at least region is represented with a lot of major cities, like LA, Miami, New York, Chicago, and more. The map is still massive, even if it's not one-to-one scale. If you played TC2, you'll of course know this. TC2's map is an evolution of the first game, but in some ways it does actually remove and downgrade certain locations and elements that made the first game feel more alive. Entire towns and dozens of landmarks were removed from the second game, and in many ways TCU2's map feels like it was designed to be a racing game map, whereas TC1 feels more like a real place. There's a lot more stuff that's just kind of there to be there and to be explored. So if you did play TC2 but not the first game, I think again you'll be pleasantly surprised with how different the map actually is. And if you want a quick overview of how different the maps really are, Greeny over on YouTube made a really interesting video showcasing a lot of the changes. So in summary, the Crew's map is enormous and alive and really well detailed with cool features like actually being able to drive to an airport to take a plane to another city. It's an extremely fun map to just cruise around in and explore. And I think it's the second largest ever handcrafted map made for a racing game, with Fuel being the biggest and TDU2 coming behind with about the same total size, but split across 2 maps instead of just 1. In my opinion, for the map alone, this game is worth playing. Seriously. And for the story alone, this game would be worth playing. But to top that all off, it actually plays quite well too. This game has no planes or boats or anything like the newer ones. It's a completely car-focused experience, and I think it's better for that. The handling, in my opinion, is much better than TC2, and not perfect, but I think it's pretty fun. And this is the only Crew game with open-world police chases. They kind of started moving away from that in the later games, but it is a major theme of the Crew 1, and the Calling All Units expansion even lets you play as a cop in a new story. There is just a ton of stuff to do in this game. Obviously, with this being a Ubisoft game with a big ol' map, there are POIs scattered around everywhere and lots of map completion objectives like uncovering the whole map for fast travel, finding all the landmarks, doing all the skill challenges and races and other events. If you like completionist or collectathon stuff, believe me, there is a lot of that in the Crew. Realistically though, at the end of the day, this was far from a perfect game. It actually reviewed somewhat poorly. And I know the racing community has kind of banded around it because it was taken away from us, and we all have a habit of looking back at old racing games with rose-tinted glasses, but ultimately it doesn't matter if the game was a masterpiece or mediocre. It was a game that was taken away from the players who bought it, and that's not right. A small team of modders have proven that the game works offline and is still very worth playing without all the online functionality. And even though the game scored some pretty mediocre reviews on launch, I think in today's world, where more serious, story-driven, and unique racing games are becoming few and far between, the Crew stands out more than it did a decade ago and offers something that I feel like a lot of players want back in their racing games. So if you've never played the Crew, find yourself a copy of the game on PC and get the TCU launcher so you can experience this great game for the first time. I promise it's worth it. And if you're lucky enough to have a copy already, like myself, then let this video serve as a PSA that you can play it again. I haven't played this in years, and even though I just got started on a new save today, I'm having an absolute blast with it. Now obviously this is just the initial release for TCU, and more work is planned. The game is playable offline right now, as we've talked about, but does have a lot of online social and PvP focused features, and if TCU can keep up this momentum, we're likely to see that release as well, to complete the full revival of the Crew. So if you want to support the development of this project, the TCU team does have a Patreon you can join. You can also check out their Discord or other socials for news, troubleshooting, and whatever else. And folks, thank you for watching this video and celebrating this win for game preservation with me. And hey, maybe someday soon, I'll be seeing you in the Crew.